evening, and thank you for attending the final City Commission Candidate Forum of 2017, hosted by the Liberal Chamber of Commerce. I'm Chris Musgrave, member of the Liberal Chamber Legislative Committee. I'll be serving as the moderator for this forum. It's also sponsored by KSCB 1270 AM and the Leader in Times, along with the Chamber. We welcome our listening audience as well as our live audience here tonight. Tonight we'll be giving each candidate a 3-minute opening remark and a 3-minute closing statement. During the questions, I'll ask the question. We'll start with a minute. We'll go down the line. We'll have a rebuttal. You get 30 seconds. The forum being aired on KSCB 1270 AM and live streamed by the Leader in Times. We now ask those in our audience to turn off your cell phones for the courtesy of our candidates. We ask the audience to remain quiet and hold any applause until the end of the forum. Each candidate upon arriving tonight has drawn a number for the purpose of determining the order in which they will speak. Mr. Barnes has won the honor of going number 1. Questions? Oh, if anyone in the live audience would like to submit a question, someone's got some pieces of paper. You can write them on and they'll bring them up to me, and I'll ask them. Okay. I want to use our candidates to remember to use the microphone when speaking and state your name. I'll announce your name so you can get your name. I'll take care of it for you. Miss Carrie Hensley. we switched at the last minute. Brad's going to be our timekeeper. So keep an eye on him. He'll give you the flags up when you're about ready to run out of time, and then the stop. So as soon as he raises that stop sign, we cut it off so we can be efficient on time tonight so we can get to all of our questions. We'll now begin the 3-minute opening remarks with our first candidate, Mr. Barnes.
My name is Justin Barnes, and I've lived in Liberal since 1998. I graduated Liberal High School in 2004. After that, I attended Kansas State University and received my Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration, so sorry for all the Jayhawk fans out there. My wife and I have 2 beautiful girls. Our oldest is 3, and our youngest just turned 1, and we both love living in Liberal, Kansas. I'm a member of the LEAD Liberal Board, and I am a member of Fellowship Baptist Church. I've been asked numerous times why I decided to run for City Commission, and my answer is very simple, and it will help guide the decisions and the actions that I take. I want to do my part to make sure that Liberal is home for future generations. As I look at my children, the choices and decisions that the City Commission make will greatly impact not only me and my future, but the children. And it will impact on whether they are able to call this great city home as well. I have several goals that I want to accomplish in running for this office. I want to aggressively work to attract retail and industry to Liberal. We must focus on industries that will thrive in our communities, including agriculture, wind energy, and large truck transportation. We need to make strides in housing development to make room for a larger workforce so that when big businesses come in, that we can be able to say, yes, we have the abilities to put the infrastructure to house our employees. I would love to focus on downtown redevelopment to attract future businesses, to give those in business a fighting chance of survival, and to make downtown a bustling center for shops, eating establishments, and businesses, and make it a fun place to be. I would like to work with all organizations and all taxing entities to create a community recreational center that would benefit all ages and citizens while making sure that we're not creating unnecessary tax burdens on our local taxpayers. I'd like to increase our tourism income by modernizing and marketing our local attractions to generate more individuals to visit Liberal and to spend their local tax dollars here. And finally, I would like to make fair, unbiased decisions that will benefit the next generation. This next commission has some pretty big ticket items on hand that they're going to have to tackle, from getting the STEM jet operational to the water plant project, future retail and industry expansion, and overall uniting the city to work towards a common goal and a common purpose. It is my hope and my dream that I am your next commissioner, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you on the last leg of this campaign. Together, let's make Liberal home.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Scarlett. Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. Everyone for coming to the forum this evening. I also want to thank Roselle, the Chamber, and the High Plains leader at KCB for sponsoring the forum. As most of you know, my name is Chris Jimenez Carlisle. I want you to know that I've been taking this race very seriously. It's a long process when you sign up in May to the general election November 7th. I've been using this time to meet people, to listen to you, and educate myself on the issues facing our city and to improve our skills as a leader. Just this month, I had the opportunity to go to a 3-day workshop called You Lead Now, put on by the Kansas Leadership Center in Wichita. This center has become the premier leadership training center in the state. One of the key ideas I took away from this workshop is concept business owner. I have been attending the meetings of different organizations around town. One of the common themes in all these meetings has been a concern about what we can do to come together as a community to put Liberal back on the map. Too many people in the community feel like we are left behind and they are concerned about our future. We need to focus on our strengths, which bring in agriculture, community. I'm very excited about the possibility of Tyson bringing a chicken processing center to our community, because it's not just about the job, but it's also business that makes sense with our resources and our workforce. We have such treasures in our community. The Mid-America Air Museum put on a night at the museum that was free to everyone. Thanks to the foundation, it was fantastic. They had over 1,300 people that attended. The air show will be next September in 2018. One of my recent experiences is to sit on the truancy court. This was a great program to address the problems of kids not attending school. This program has a proven track record of keeping kids in school. This program has stating their diplomas. We know these kids are our future, our next business owners, and maybe our next city commissioners. I pledge right now, if I am city commissioner, I will continue to support this program. We need to continue to explore all opportunities to help our young people to be active, productive in our community, such as having a rec center. Often good ideas float around until there is a right combination of interest and opportunity. Everything I've learned in the past 5 months makes me believe more than ever that we need a better communication between the city staff and citizens of Liberal. If given the opportunity to be your next city commissioner, I promise to keep my door open to you and be your voice for the city commission. I will appreciate your vote November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlisle. Mr. Warren.
I'd like to thank the Chamber for giving us this opportunity, KSCB, Cleveland County, and everyone that's showed up in the audience to give us this opportunity. I would like to know a little bit more about what our thoughts are on this election, what we can do for the city. I believe in the first stage of this election, we narrowed it down to just 6, and I think this is going to be a good one for the city. We've got good choices here. We're moving forward. I think the statement was made that we'd like to see some change in the way the city does business and how we operate our city division. I think that, like I say, we've got the first week of the city and we've operated for 6 years. We've got a lot of change. I think there's a lot of things that we need to address in our community, a lot of things we'd like to get out the door, but I think one of the most important things is start to mend a lot of relationships that we have with the taxpayers, with our grassroots businesses in our community. And I think we start looking at one of the things that we said with transparency. We've got to figure out how to do business and let the taxpayers know what's going on in our community. We do need to learn how to work better with the county, how to work with the school board. I know there's several issues. We've had some discussions with the county and some of the school board members that feel like that we could do things to communicate better, have meetings that we actually accomplish something. So I look forward to us being able to accomplish that out of this election. There's issues, the 1 cent sales tax will be coming up for renewal in a few years, and we really need to work hard to let the community know what we're doing with that money. That money is to do extra things that we can't do with the general fund. And we need to get back to looking at that at budget time every year and doing those things. I believe once this board goes in place that we need to have some work sessions right off the bat. Just being budget is and where all of the budget items and where the money is spent. If we feel like we need to make we can do that right away. And, look forward tonight to answering some questions and maybe seeing if we can make some progress. Thank you.
Mr. Warren, Mr. Combs.
I'd also like to thank everybody who made this forum possible and those in attendance and those listening. My family and I moved to Liberal, Kansas when I was 3 years old, and Liberal's home. I attended kindergarten through 12th grade here, graduated from high school here, and college for a year before transferring to K-State. While at K-State, I earned my bachelor's in biology, and then after that, I went to Southwestern College to get my master's. I currently work at Sept Community College and serve as the Dean of Industrial Technology at UNICA. And prior to moving back in 2012, I used to teach high school science at an alternative high school in Virginia. I'm a current member of the USD Board of Education, where I serve on a bunch of different committees. I am the president of Seward County United Way, Cinco de Mayo, and then also a member of the Local Area Coalition for Families. I'm the past president of the Kansas Liberal Education Association, and also a member of the Council of Governments. My philosophy is relatively simple: lifelong service and social responsibility. Personally, I feel like giving back and supporting a variety of worthy causes has a direct impact locally. And if we invest our time and energy to giving back to our community, we're building a better place to work and live. I'm passionate about providing positive opportunities for anyone seeking improvement or a second chance. And I'm equally as passionate about making sure our community is educated and knowing about the amazing community agencies and programs that Liberal already has to offer. Running for City Council is an opportunity to do what I love best, what I love most, and what I do best: fostering social impact and serving the needs of others by making a positive difference in their lives. The chance to represent the people of Liberal, where I was raised and have lived all my life, is the best possible way to express my gratitude to the community, which has given me so much. I'm running for City Commission in Liberal because I want to share an optimistic, energetic, and updated vision for local government. I want to be able to create policies with other commissioners that empower our most important resources: the men, women, and children, the seniors and millennials, teachers and students, those born here in our great city, and those who immigrate to it from all over the world, as well as business owners, entrepreneurs, and innovators that make our community great. To get us there, I plan to be part of the solution, not the problem. As an educator, when I see a problem, I immediately want to solve it. That's as simple as politics should be and can be. As an advocate for cultural diversity, I believe people of all ages and economic backgrounds belong in Liberal. Our diversity is our largest asset in the United States. As citizens of Liberal, we all deserve a voice at the legislative table that has a vision for creating an inclusive, stable, and responsible economy that will drive our community's growth. I will work to ensure that the City of Liberal becomes a collaborative partner with USD 480 by promoting affordable and quality housing options and improving and providing the best public education Kansas has to offer.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Stevens.
I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Legislative Committee and the sponsors for making this forum possible. And thank you to everyone in the audience who came this evening. I want to repeat my name. It's Connie L. Segrist. Just remember, my theme for my campaign is Connie Cares. So look for Connie on the ballot, and please vote for me on November 7th in the general election. I was born in Liberal, Kansas, living my childhood life at 128 West Coolidge Street. That's on the corner of Coolidge and South Pershing. I graduated from Liberal High School, Kansas State University, and Katy Medical Center. I taught in the medical laboratory technician program at Sept County Community College and now serve on the medical laboratory technician advisory board. I have good business experience. I own Risers Ladies Clothing Store in downtown Liberal, and then own Connie's Hallmark Shop, Handy Card and Gifts in the Liberal Plaza North Shopping Center. I serve on the Business and Industry Board of Sept County Community College. I am a licensed realtor with Landmark Real Estate Center and have experience with contracts and negotiations. I've served on the Focus on the Future Committee since the very beginning. I've attended the focus groups and I've heard your requests. I understand the master plan for the 1 cent sales tax. At every focus group meeting, I have heard your request for a community recreation center. This is also my dream. It is for my children, my grandchildren, now my great-grandchildren. I truly care about a rec center and hope that we can achieve this in the near future. I care about the airport and our credibility with the FAA. The city is in arbitration with the FAA over money owed to the FAA in the Walmart ball fields transaction. In the meantime, we have lost out on grants from the FAA, which might have helped pay for the $42,222 snow removal room, which the city had to purchase with the 1 cent sales tax. They took that out of economic development. We need to get the airport back in good standing with the FAA. I care about the Senior Citizens Community Center. I serve on the Council for Aging at the center. I care about tourism as a member of the Liberal Convention and District Bureau Advisory Board. I have learned how important it is that we keep heads in the beds of our motels because they collect a 6% sales tax.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Harden.
Hello everyone, my name is David Harden. I am Technology for All Incorporated here in Liberal. Definitely want to thank everybody for putting on the forum today and everybody that attended the first, second, and third forum and have been following all of the politics here locally. I am also a board member with your local Chamber of Commerce and a board member with your Joint Economic Development Council. First off, I just want to say thank everyone who voted in the primary election. I feel like you guys did an excellent job showing up to the polls, and we definitely appreciate the fact that you guys are still paying attention and plan on coming back and getting the 3 finalists through the general. The one thing that I want to start out saying in the opening remarks, I've been exceedingly disappointed that throughout this entire election, this has been surrounded with so much negativity. It seems like we do have a lot of controversial topics at city level that involve multifaceted amounts of our, whether it be our local county commission working with our city commission working with our school board, or just our city working with anyone. I do want to say there's so many positive things going on in our community. I see so many things blossoming. And the most incredible thing about our community are the people that tie us together. So I want to encourage everybody to stay positive throughout the rest of this and realize that we have 6 pretty fantastic finalists as is. And things will continue to get better as long as we focus on working with each other as a community. One of the main precipice points that I've tried to push this entire time is we have to have unity in this community, guys. Our city and county, we have to be on the same page about every single project that we work on. Same thing with the school board, same thing with college, same thing with us working with the state and the federal government. We have so many amazing opportunities that are available to us where we're geographically located that I don't feel like we're taking advantage of because there are personal impasses in the way. And I think that we're definitely on the right track of making sure that we get these open lines of communication. But we have to understand we're not always going to get along, but we definitely have to make sure that we're willing to look past that and still work with each other for the best of the community. One of the main focus points that I heard everybody talk about here that I think is absolutely right is industry. And while we are an ag-centered location here in Kansas, I also do feel like we need to start focusing on bringing in different types of industry. We need to make sure that all our eggs are not in one basket or in 2 baskets, but instead try to take opportunities and risks that we generally wouldn't think that a place in small town USA or in Kansas has the opportunity to take. If there's one thing that technology showed me, we already live in a world without borders. You can have pretty much any kind of technology anywhere in the world now, and most of it's wirelessly driven. So I would definitely like to see us continue to push into agriculture, but also push into technology sectors inside the industry. And the main thing, like I said, everybody stay positive, everything's going to get better. And working out well for Liberal, and we have a very bright future in front of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Okay, so now we're going to start with our questions, and I want to remind you all we have 1 minute. We'll start with Mr. Varnes. We'll work down the row. You all get your 1 minute chance to answer. And then after we finish with Mr. Harden, we'll come back to Mr. Varnes. You'll have 30-second rebuttal. And then we'll start with Ms. Carlisle after that, and then proceed down the line like we did the last couple times. Okay, is everybody ready? Here we go. First question is, if elected, what are your top 2 goals that you want to accomplish as a commissioner?
My top two goals would be, first off, economic development, keeping the foot on the gas pedal, continuing to bring people in, and industries in, retail industry, all of that. And then my second goal would to just be unite the city, get everyone focused on one common goal, focused on making Liberal just a better place to live, and keep moving the foot forward.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle.
I would like to bring better communication between the administration and the City of Liberal, also better service for the city administration and the residents of Liberal. I agree we need to bring in more industries, economic development, but we also need it on north end of town, on the south end of town instead of north end of town. That's also what I'd like to bring, and make sure that we get everything taken care of with the FAA and the Walmart deal and get back to being positive, just like Taylor said, because we're kind of a laughing stock, Liberal is, because nobody can get along, and so I'm hoping we can bring the new city commissions together, and I think we all get along pretty well. So hopefully that's what can happen.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren.
I guess the main 2 things, first thing is I would like to involve the public in the local government more than it feels like it's involved now. And that may be by in listening to the boards that we have appointed and the boards that we don't have in place that we need to put in place, involving more people in the decisions of our community and listening to those. I think in the past that some of those boards have felt like they're out there trying to do their job, but nobody's listening. And I hope we can restore that as a commission, work with the boards to do that. And the other second thing really is the 1 cent sales tax. Like I say, involve the whole community again in making decisions on where we want to spend that money and put that back into work the way it was intended.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs.
I have a couple different things that I would like to focus on. 2 of them, the top 2 would be increasing recreation for the community, whether that's through the rec center, dog parks, things like that, things that are going to attract people when they're applying for jobs, or if we need new teachers coming in, when they come in to look at our schools, what are the things that are available to them, because a lot of them are going to be living in apartment complexes, and if they come with animals and things like that, they need somewhere to go and things to do. And the second thing would be to take a look at all of the policies that hinder citizens rather than empower them, like the ordinances where you get fined $150 if you don't mow your grass, but the city doesn't get fined for not mowing their grass. I would like to make sure that those policies are out the window.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Mrs. Segrist.
I think we need to immediately get the FAA controversy settled so we can go on with grants and get help to buy things for our airport and get our airport back in good standing. I'm also very upset with the way the 1 cent sales tax has been used as the slush fund for the city commissioners. And we need to get that back on track and get those dollars in the right departments and get those areas paid back, the money that's been borrowed supposedly for use by the city from different departments. So those are my 2 goals, the FAA and the 1 cent sales tax, the immediate goal.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. Mr. Harden.
The 2 number 1 goals I would have both tie together, pretty tight knit. The airport Man, guys, I feel like we're missing out on a huge opportunity at the airport. When you look at the tarmac size of every single airport in the state of Kansas, you'll find ours is only second to Wichita. And I understand that a lot of the options that we have out there, such as constructing a control tower or getting the tarmacs available for very large aircraft to be able to land, is expensive, but I believe we need to exhaust all possible efforts into figuring out if there's any better way we can utilize the airport overall. Secondly is industry. We need more money in this town. We need more high-paying jobs that people can actually move in from outside the community and start a life here and live here for the rest of their lives. So I definitely want to see a huge, sharp increase in the amount of $80,000 a year plus jobs that are available to the people in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. We're going to go down the line. If anybody has a 30-second rebuttal, Mr. Barnes, Ms. Carlisle, Mr. Warren, Mr. Combs, Ms. Segrist, Mr. Hart. Okay, question 2. What is your personal qualification or past experience that would help benefit the city? Mrs. Carlisle.
Well, I own 3 businesses, and I know running the city is almost like a business. So, like the 1 cent sales tax, like they're talking, make sure it goes where it needs to go, make sure everybody does their job for the city. I'm hoping that I can also bring just everything. I'm hoping that I can bring what I can bring from the table of my businesses to the city. So I just hope that everybody can work together, and I'm hoping that I can bring all that to the table.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren.
Thank you. I'd like to start with the past experience instead of present to start with, but past, I do have 6 years experience on the city commission, dating back as far as 2001. So I have a little experience doing things a different way, and I think that could be helpful to this board moving forward. Present qualifications, I'm not a speech maker, I'm not a good speaker at all, but I can take my jacket off and roll my sleeves up and do some work, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get us back on track. And I'm not saying that things are bad out there, because there's a lot of good things happening in Liberal, but there's a different way to do things.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs.
I think some of the personal qualifications and past experiences that I serve on the school board right now, and we deal with a very large budget and are financially responsible with that money that the community puts in, as well as the state and federal dollars that we receive. And so spending the money out of the right budget lines for the right things would be one of the things that I would bring to the table. I also think that I bring a wealth of knowledge in regards to the culture and diversity of our community, the socioeconomic background and status, the educational level of our community, and can hopefully provide resources and opportunities to improve those. And I've also served on numerous other boards in town and have been able to see and be involved in different community activities and outreach.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Mrs. Segrist.
Well, I think my business experience would be helpful because I learned how to hire and fire people and how to manage money and pay taxes and all the little things you have to do in business. I've served on several large boards. I was on Kansas State University Alumni Association board, and I've also served on Southwest Medical Center Hospital board. And both of those boards surprisingly followed the Kansas Open Meetings Act. And so I understand that, and I truly believe in that, and would see that we followed that if I were elected a commissioner. Sorry.
You still have 15 seconds. Thank you, Ms. Segrist. Mr. Harden.
I would definitely have to say between business experience and people skills. Ever since I was a young child, I've always been told I have an innate ability to be able to work with people who are unbearable to others. And I know when it comes to politics, you're going to be put in that predicament quite often. Between that and the business experience, the way I've always viewed business is it's either boom or bust. There's really no gray area in between. And when you look at a community, I feel like it's roughly the same thing. You're either growing or you're dwindling. And I want to make sure that I can use all of the available assets that I have to try to help our community grow and to help deliver better relationships between everybody in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes.
I would say my experience in management, I've managed a restaurant, I've managed a clothing store, and then my current accounting management skills. Currently, you know, I've had what seems like impossible goals put in front of us, and I've had to work with all different departments and all different types of people and all different personalities. And at the end of the day, we all had to come together. We threw it all on a whiteboard. We got it worked out, and we succeeded at the end. So I've had to go through approval processes on accounting codes and figuring out which funds need to go where. So I would say that overall my management experience and then my leadership experience has equipped me to be a good commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle, do you have a rebuttal? No? Mr. Warren? Mr. Combs? Ms. Seegers? Mr. Harden? Okay. We will go to our next question. We will start with Mr. Warren. Name the biggest challenge or concerns you currently see within the city and tell us how you would address it.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges before us was going to probably be the water treatment plant. But I'm not sure I can do the second part of the deal, the answer to the second part of the question without saying that it's going to take a lot of working with other people to try to figure out what's going to be the best solution for our community. And as a commissioner, that's going to be the main priority for me is what's best for the city itself and its taxpayers. So I would say that's one of our biggest challenges that we have to face in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs?
I think our biggest challenge that we're going to face with the new board is trying to get the community to trust them again, and for the board to become transparent again to the citizens who put them there, and to trust them that they're going to make the right decision. One of the biggest concerns that I see moving forward would be the lack of financial responsibility with the way that things have been handled, where funds have been moved from X to Z to cover Y. And so I think that's probably the biggest concern that I see moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Mrs. Segrist?
Well, my biggest concern is the waste treatment plant. I think there are many unanswered questions that have been we've been left in the dark regarding this. At one time they were doing our own treatment plant, and then all of a sudden we're doing a plant with National Beef. I think we need to have a public forum on this, and all of this needs to be explained.
Thank you, Mrs. Segrist. Mr. Harden?
I definitely find the biggest challenge to be how we find ability to be able to grow on such a tight budget. I know that I believe our commissioners did an excellent job when preparing the 2018 budget, but from the outside looking in, you always assume that cities just have umpteen amounts of dollars to be able to do any projects they want, and then once you get involved on this side of it, you realize how tight everything really is. So I'm very intrigued and interested to see how much more efficient we can become financially to be able to provide ourselves the opportunities. I think it's going to be a pretty fantastic challenge to be able to figure that out.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
I would say our biggest challenge is, what does liberal look like in 20, 30, 40, 50 years? What do we want the town to be? Do we want it to be retail? Do we want it to be entertainment? Do we want it to be everything? So I think that would be our biggest challenge, is what does it look like? What does the community, how do they want to define that? And then a concern I would say would be just, I've said it before, but just getting everybody together, uniting the city once again. Stop the bickering back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We're all entitled to our opinion, but we need to move forward and provide a united front to all those future businesses and industries that come into town.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Mrs. Carlisle?
I agree with the water waste treatment. It's been over, everybody's just had dealings with it, that like the 1 cent sales, I mean, the water waste treatment as far as the, excuse me, I'm just kind of nervous tonight. The dealing with making sure that the water waste treatment is dealt with by the next city commission, not than the one now. Hopefully they'll wait for that. That's our biggest challenge. What can they do now before we get in that we need to take care of? So I think that is going to be one of our big challenges, is making sure we get to take care of what we need to on the next city commission meeting when we're elected.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlisle. We'll go back through. Do you have a 30-second rebuttal, Mr. Combs? Nope. Okay. We'll go on to the next question. And since we're on you, Travis, since you're the only one that had one personally directed to you, I'll go ahead and give you that question now. This is to Travis Combs. If you get elected, will you be on the school board, the city commission, or both? Which would you focus most on?
It's funny that that's like a pressing question. The answer to that would be whichever I feel I'm going to be most valuable to. And if it's both, then great. I've spoken with the Attorney General's office, the Office of Ethics, and the Commission of Ethics, and both have told me that I could serve on both if I wanted to, because they don't see it as an incompatibility of office. And so I enjoy absolutely serving on the school board. I also think that I have tons of great things that I could provide to the city commission and to the community. And, you know, it's whatever the community votes. If they vote me into the city commission, then I'll move on, and then I may stay on the school board. I really enjoy staying on the school board, but like I said, I would like to offer what I have to the community as well, as far as a city commissioner.
And what I'll do is I'll just, since it was directed towards him, if anybody has a 30-second tidbit they want to add to his comments. Nobody? Mr. Warren?
I started as early as today trying to convince Travis that he just needs to stay on the school board, and we'll already go ahead and start working on the relationship between the city commission and the school board.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Okay, we'll go on to the next question for everybody here. And we're going to start with Ms. Segrist. Name Liberal's greatest asset.
Liberal's greatest asset are the people. We are a friendly town, and we get to know people easily. We have people moving in and out, and we make people feel welcome. Our second greatest asset, I think, are our attractions that we have throughout the community that we need to stay focused on and keep them up and add more.
Segrist? Mr. Harden?
I definitely have to agree with Connie. I think our people around here are really what separate us from being like any other community. You know, like I was saying earlier with the negativity, the one positive side of that is everybody cares. Everybody's been talking about the city and wanting to see change and wanting to see things happen. So, you know, I think the people around here are definitely a driving, moving force in what's kept us relevant this long. To add in a second one, our aquifer. We have one of the best aquifers in the entire state of Kansas, and it will guarantee our longevity as a community in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
To echo the other two, I would have to say our people. When my family moved here in 1998, we truly did not know a single soul. We unpacked the moving truck, and that was it. It was just me, my siblings, and my parents. And ever since then, Liberal has been so gracious to us. They've been so welcoming. Liberal brought my wife here, so I'm very thankful for that. But the people, I feel like we solve problems easily. We all are hard workers. When we put our minds to achieving something, we come together and we get it done. And then I would have to add a second is our geographical location. We've got a great intersection here of two major highways, and then just where we're at as far as agricultural and wind energy and those types of things.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
I agree. The biggest asset is the people. I've lived here all my life, moved here when I was 2 years old, and everybody here has been great. That's why we've opened 2 businesses, and we just make sure that everybody has a job. We just want to make sure that all the people of the citizens are taken care of as well as we were been taken care of all these years that we've lived here.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
Well, I'm going to have to agree with everybody else, and it always has been the people of this community that are the biggest asset.
you'll find them the most caring and giving people that you'll find. We have a lot of volunteers, not just for public service, but sports. I know Brad goes out and helps with Kids Inc. There's a lot of people that are here tonight probably that have helped with Kids Inc. And help with other projects and that type of thing. So people in Liberal are really giving, and the other thing they are is they're intelligent. There's a lot of people in our community that are smart enough to know when they're not being told the right thing, and I think that's the opportunity we're going to have to fix this time is to try to mend the relationship we talked about earlier with those people and let them know everything.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs?
So I'm going to echo everybody else that said the people, and I'm going to take it a step further. I really think it's the students that we have in our community, because they're really our future. They're the ones who are going to shape Liberal in the years to come, but also their teachers, because they're the ones who provide that foundational skill and learning for them to grow and to prosper in our community. I also think that our school infrastructure, now that the schools are done and open, I really think those are going to be a huge selling point to businesses and families looking to move to Liberal.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Anybody have 30 seconds they'd like to talk about this? No? All right, we'll go to the next question then. Just keep moving right along. All right, next question is going to start with Mr. Harden. Everyone talks about the city not doing enough to stimulate growth. In your understanding, what role should the city take and what role can they take? Give specific examples, not generalities.
It's an excellent question, Mr. Musgrave.
Thank you, Mr. Harden.
So I would definitely say that because I don't have experience as a commissioner, I can't necessarily point out specific ideals or instances. But I know one thing I believe is that it shouldn't all fall on the city manager and Joint Economic Development Council to be the providers for growth in an area. Especially when you have commissioners that have specialties in certain specific industries. I do believe that, we as commissioners should be the ones trying to also help contact businesses and then direct them towards Joint Economic Development Council. I know that if elected, I have 7 businesses right at the top of my list that I'm immediately going to start to email, phone call, bug the living crap out of until they listen to us, because there are parts of industry that I think that would be very beneficial to every person here in Liberal. And I know that I think as a commissioner, you have to take a very active stance, and instead of always relying on other people and just saying, oh, well, how'd that work out? Oh, well, shucks. Well, let's get on the horn, get people on the phone, and get some people on both ends that know what they're talking about to make the relationship work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
I feel that the city commission can do anything in their power as far as creating CIDs or special districts for tax incentives, those types of things. Using economic development funds for streets, drainage, utilities. We need to be thinking outside the box and looking at other communities. Hey, what have you done as far as, I know Garden City passed star bonds, and there's just a whole wealth of things out there that we can do. Rezoning areas that might be zoned agricultural to industry for a big business that wants to come in. So just looking at each specific business, looking at each specific industry, figuring out what it's going to take to get them here, figuring out what incentives are out there as far as that we can do on a state and local level, and just putting them into place.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
I think we need to continue giving incentives to bring people in, so that way we can have economic growth on just, not just the north end, like I said, the south end also. We need to also work on bringing, like I said, more restaurants. We've got restaurants, but we don't want to stop growth. So we want to make sure you bring in more restaurants. We need to bring in factories. Hopefully this chicken plant will do that. So, and then it'll bring people in instead of just shuffling people around. So that way we can bring families in. And then, again, the kids will come and then they will help, support Liberal and bring in new ideas for us to bring everything together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
I think the main thing we can do as a commission, if not each of us are going to come up with the grand idea of what we can do for growth, but what we can do is we can support the people that do. I know recently the JDC I think they're kind of on a move for and I'll probably get this wrong, Taylor will tell me, a gigabyte city or something like that, but making the internet better in Liberal, and that's an improvement, and I think it's something that can help with growth. But any of these ideas that people have and these groups have, we need to support them and do what we can to make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs.
I think the first thing that I would say in order to stimulate growth is that the city commission's got to be transparent with the community. And I keep going back to transparency, but that's really a lot of the issue that we're faced with today. So maybe there needs to be forums where the community members can provide feedback rather than being attacked for their opinions or ideas. I think that the current city commission shouldn't use educational sales tax dollars to build roads, put up stoplights, or pay for city drainage in areas that have flooded for years to be tied into the city's or the school district's retention ponds. We really, I hit on it earlier, need to eliminate the ordinances in this community that are going to end up preventing businesses and families from moving here. Word of mouth. If it's a hard community to live in, then they're not going to come.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Ms. Segrist.
Well, I think every person in this audience can be a recruiter. You can come up with ideas of things we need. Talk to the city commissioners. I've said I'll listen, and I think all of these people at the table will listen. Give us your ideas. Maybe your brother-in-law works for a company somewhere, and they're looking to relocate. You're the only one who knows that. But if you will tell someone, the city commission, maybe we can get that company here. So keep in mind, you can all be a recruiter.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. We'll go around. Does anybody have a 30-second rebuttal? No? Okay, on to the next question. And we'll start with Mr. Barnes. Would you support incentives to attract builders to build single-family and multi-unit housing? If so, what incentives do you recommend?
Absolutely. Any incentive is good for a builder, whether it's an incentive to put in streets and drainage, a tax credit. I support any and all incentives to bring single-family, multifamily, big apartments, small apartments, duplexes, whatever it takes to bring a builder and a developer into Liberal to help grow and move the city in the next direction. I'm all for it, and I'll vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Mrs. Carlisle?
I agree with Justin. Any incentive to bring anybody in to build housing, businesses of any sort. I know that we had a $19,000 incentive to the Civic Center that we paid back because they had paid for the water to be tapped into our city, and we gave that to the new hotel going on North End. So that was a big incentive. So yes, definitely whatever we can do to get them here.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
I'm going to have to abstain. I'm just kidding. I was on the first housing board, and I believe we started in 1999, and with several gentlemen. A lot of you guys know, and I'm going to miss somebody, but Shannon Francis, I believe, was on that board. Marvin Chance, Lynn Thompson, Don Witzke, I think, was on the board, I think, when we started. And Rick Harnden, a lot of people might remember Rick, but I did abstain when they first started voting on giving contractors incentives for building houses. But what I will say is that it worked. We got houses built when they weren't being built, and it's worked in the past. And the city actually has really good incentives in place right now that I agree with for housing, and I think it's necessary in a community like this that wants to grow to have those things available.
Mr. Combs?
I support any housing incentive that there is or could be or may be. I think first ask the builders what they need. So often we always put these things in place, or we add this or add that or take this away, but we never ask the people that it affects what they need or why. And so you may see a bunch of housing and apartment complexes in other communities going up, but I'm sure those communities, reached out to them and said, hey, what can we do to bring you here? I think that the City Commission can do a better job of reaching out to the builders, the businesses, things like that, to offer the incentives by asking, what is it that we can do for you to bring you to Liberal?
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Mrs. Segrist?
Infrastructure is the biggest expense that a builder cannot afford. And if the city would help with the infrastructure in an area that a builder can build in, this would help a great deal. And any other incentives that they can offer to the builders, so we can have an open market of builders building in Liberal.
Thank you, Mrs. Segrist. Mr. Harden?
I definitely agree with the statements from the other candidates. However, I'm a very conservative and frugal individual. You're going to find that 9 out of 10 times I try to get a business in or get any kind of development going without an incentive that costs our city money, if possible. However, I would support any kind of incentive packages that are available that don't negatively impact our city in a way where it's positively impacting the developer but hurting our bottom line. I'd like to think that if we create the industry, and the industry that we bring in is going to have exceedingly high-paying jobs, that we would be able to have the manufacturing of the homes being done, because they know that people that have the money to be able to afford to buy the home would be available to buy the home as soon as they're finished in the first place. So yes, I would support incentives. However, I truly try to not have to give away free money if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Anybody with 30-second response? Mr. Barnes? Carlisle? Mr. Warren?
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit when he's talking about the housing board. Currently, we do not have a housing board, and that is one of the things I'd like to see happen again, so it's not just builders like myself saying, hey, we really need to be doing this, or we need to be doing this. We need several, mortgage people, realtors, contractors, whatever, getting together and brainstorming to see what we need to do. And Connie must have heard me earlier today. I was telling somebody we need some infrastructure here. We'd get 10 houses more a year built if we had some of it, lots available.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs? No? Seriously? Okay. We'll go on to our next question, and we'll start with Ms. Carlisle. Many people compared Liberal to surrounding communities. Do you believe this is fair? Why or why not?
Well, I know Liberal used to be the big town around. Garden used to come here, Dodge used to come here. So no, I compare Garden City to Liberal. Why have they gotten bigger than us? And no, I don't. I think it's okay to compare. That way we can get people doing what they need to do to get Liberal to where it needs to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
Well, I think I remember some of these kind of questions from the past, because it always is going to be a comparison between Liberal, Dodge, and Garden. And I think it was said before that, that Dodge was the entertainment center and Garden was the shopping center, and what is Liberal. And I think and I don't know that we've completely determined that yet, but we do have a few things going, the Air Museum and Dorothy's house, and some things that we can go, that they don't have. And that's what we need to be working on. I think we talked about the internet thing, or said something about it. That might be something we can beat them to and try to get a leg up. And the airport also, we have an advantage.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs?
Well, I think the word fair is up for debate. It depends upon what you define as fair. I think it's up to interpretation, because life's not fair. Yeah, you can judge and say, oh, well, Garden City is growing and Liberal's not. But on the committees that I've served on, United Way Board, Coalition for Families, International Rescue Commission, working at the Adult Learning Center, we do a lot of things right in this community. And yeah, we may not have a Starbucks or the Buffalo Wild Wings, but we do a lot of grassroots things great in this community. And unless you're diving into it head first to notice those things, you're never going to see it. So, yeah, you could say it's not fair, or that it's fair to compare, but it's really not, because we do a lot of great things and without having to compare.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Mrs. Segrist.
Well, don't we all want something we don't have, and compare other things? Probably Hooker and Tyrone compare Liberal to their town. So we're always going to make comparisons, but that causes us to do better and make our community better. So I think it's good that we compare.
Thank you, Mr. Segrist. Mr. Harden?
I definitely try to compare Liberal to Garden City and Dodge City as little as humanly possible. In my opinion, since I was a kid, all three of these cities have been very different. And you know, it's okay in my opinion to have one be the entertainment hub and one be the retail hub and then the other be the industrial hub. If we continue looking at our neighboring cities as direct competition to us, then every time that we try to develop out any kind of industry, we're going to be developing that to hurt them because we're trying to pull in the same kind of things they already have. So whenever I look at the city of Liberal, I see a genuine opportunity for us to create an identity that we've never really had before. Because, you know, we view Dodge as the entertainment hub and Garden City as the retail hub. Well, we've never really designated ourselves to be any one specific thing, and I definitely don't think that we should be looking at communities that are only an hour away to try to figure out what we want our identity to be when we can look at the rest of the United States and find other cities that we can try to strive to become. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
I do think it's okay to compare or fair to compare Liberal to other communities because I think that competition is healthy and I think that it's important. I think that, you know, there's a lot of tax dollars going north on Highway 83 every Saturday. And I think that that's okay to compare Liberal to Garden and say, how can I put that block up there? How can I get those people to quit traveling north? Do we have to be identical to Dodge? On basic things, on basic things, keep people in Liberal on the weekends, they're going to keep people staying here. We need to compare Liberal to other communities and figure out why they're leaving and what can we do to keep them to stay here.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Anybody have 30 seconds they'd like to use? Ms. Connie Segrist, go ahead.
I forgot one thing we have. We have Pancake Day. So that can be our distinction.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. Okay, well, we'll go on to our next question. We'll start with Mr. Warren. Do you believe in the 1% sales tax incentive as it is set up? Why or why not?
I guess if you're talking about the percentages, I don't necessarily have a problem with the percentages, how they're set up. I do have a problem with how we've spent the 1% sales tax, I guess. And I would like to, and I think that's one of the things this commission has to do, is as soon as we, whichever three members are here become part of the new commission, it needs to be addressed where the 1% sales tax is being spent and make changes if we have to. That's something the community needs to be aware of it, the community needs to be involved in it. Percentage-wise, I think that should be open for debate the next time we have the 1% sales tax in front of the voters.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Combs?
Yes and no. I do believe in the 1% sales tax. I don't believe in the way that it's been spent. I think it's been spent irresponsibly. So the school district has an interlocal agreement with the city to receive half of the 1% sales tax for educational purposes to pay down the bonds of the new schools. In that interlocal agreement, the city, whatever they deem infrastructure, they can spend the educational sales tax dollars. So if you notice the new stoplight at 15th and Western, that was paid for by the school district, although the school district never knew about it because the city never communicated it to the school board, which is in the agreement that it has to be done and communicated in order for them to spend the money. Same thing with the drainage ditch out behind the Liberal Inn, and same thing with Walnut and Hickory. We're completely replacing those roads from Kansas Avenue all the way to the new schools. So no, I agree with the 1% sales tax and it's doing great things for the community, but not the way it's been spent.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Mrs. Segrist?
Well, I believe in keeping percentages on the different areas of the 1% sales tax. Perhaps those percentages could be changed somewhat. But if we don't have percentages for different areas, then it really becomes a slush fund. Because The present commissioners would like for that to just be put in the general budget. And we do not want that, because the 1 cent sales tax is for things special in this community. That was the intent, to pay for things that cannot be bought or paid for out of the general budget. This was for special things, and if we don't keep it with the percentages, we'll lose that whole idea.
Thank you, Mrs. Segrist. Mr. Harden.
Completely agree with Connie on that topic and some of the other commissioners, or potential commissioners, excuse me. The 1 cent sales tax is something that as a normal civilian, before I got involved in this, I didn't know a whole lot about the 1 cent sales tax. I'd heard it thrown around a lot, but I never actually knew exactly what it consisted of, and was lucky enough to have a citizen from the community bring me the newspaper clippings from around the time when that was originally coming out, and I've since gotten to delve pretty deep into it. To me, it seems like a massively beneficial program for the community to participate with. However, I do think because of some of the alleged misappropriation, we're going to have to lobby really hard as is to get the community to want to continue this program. And then I would like to think that we could, look at possibly changing some of the percentage on an annual basis moving forward if we do continue the 1 cent sales tax, to make sure that if we have an area that becomes more needful than the year before, that we can allocate more funds into that for the following fiscal year and change it adaptively. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
I love the 1 cent sales tax. I think it's done some great things and beneficial things for our community. But one thing I would like to see is when you say economic development, my opinion of economic development is totally different probably than Chris's and on down the line. I would like to see more defined maybe subpoints or bullet points, and maybe that's in there, and I apologize to the committee that's on that if it already is. But I think we can define those more into their specific buckets. I think by those committees showing up to the commissioner meetings and saying, hey, you know what, it looks like on the agenda you're going to vote for something that's coming out of the 1 cent sales tax. I don't agree with that. You can totally do that, and I think that more opinions and more voices need to be made ahead of time rather than after the fact, after it's already been voted on.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Mrs. Carlisle?
Yeah, I believe in the 1 cent sales tax. It was approved in 2010, and it's going to go through 2021. The street drainage and a portion of that is 60%. The economic is 15%. The housing development 15%, and crime prevention and beautification is 5%. So I think they can do a lot better job and maybe changing a little of the percentages. I think Liberal needs to be beautified just a little bit more. I think maybe it needs a little bit more than 5%. Whoever bought those Dorothy's didn't do a very good job. But anyway, yeah, I think that we can relook at that and maybe change some percentages on it.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlisle. Did we start with you?
Yeah.
We're going to go, okay, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd just like to say this, it becomes very difficult for Liberal to move forward without the 1 cent sales tax. So it is very important for us to gain the confidence of the community and how we spend that money.
This moment to break in for the legal ID required by our broadcast side. This is Talk Radio 1270, KSCB Liberal.
Okay. This one. Do you like the current structure of Joint Economic Development Council, or are there changes you would like to make?
Honestly, development committee's structure looks like. And so that's something that I would look into, and if there were changes or suggestions to be made by people on the committee or outside
not know the total structure of the Joint Economic Development Council. I know some people who serve on it, but I honestly do not know their goals and objectives.
Thank you, Mrs. Seegers. Mr. Harden.
From being on Joint Economic Development Council, I know a little bit about how it functions. I actually think that JEDC works fairly well. Really the only critique I could have is if our Chief of Economic Development Council, who's a city employee, possibly had a little more jurisdiction to be able to pursue things without needing so many approvals beforehand. It might expedite the way that we can bring in business and industry, but I don't necessarily think anything about the way we function as a committee needs directly influenced or changed, because I do definitely like that anybody on JEDC and anybody from the community can present ideas. Businesses from outside the area will get a hold of us. We'll go down and take a look at their business, do everything we can to try to help them get in. So I definitely don't think there's a lot of restructuring that needs done, maybe just a few small tweaks.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
I apologize to the committee. I don't really know much about their structure or how they operate, so I can't give an honest answer on that. However, what I can say is that I am looking forward to learning about the different committees and groups throughout Liberal, figuring out how I can be an asset to them and what their goals and objections are.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
I'm not sure either about the structure of the group. I do know that I had attended the group that they had a meeting a couple weeks ago at the Sewer County building, and it was very interesting just to listen to what they're trying to do for Liberal. So I do support what they're trying to do for Liberal, but I'm not sure exactly how their structure is.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
Well, I'm not going to claim to know the exact structure. I do know that there are members appointed by the city, the county, the school, and the college, and I think there are some at large, and I think that's probably a good setup. We need to keep every entity in the community involved, and I do know that the staff member, the economic development director, is paid solely by the city. So I would also, in our relationships with the county and the schools, would like to invite them to help pay that salary, and we'll share that. But I think it's a good deal to work together, and I think it's something that could be actually seriously talked about, making the JEDC the functioning body for all the different entities, and those appointments then by each board become as important as they really are, even though, like I say, they haven't really been heard as much as they should.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. 30 seconds.
I was just going to bow out. I have to go to the school board meeting, so sorry you guys have to sit here and take more questions. But if you have more questions for me, feel free to reach out to me. But I'm going to head out.
Thank you, Mr. Combs. Okay. Oh, yes, please, by all means.
I just want to point out, just because it now sounds like JEDC is like some kind of secret service organization, essentially, Ron was right. We have county commission influence on there. We have local business leaders and business owners on that commission. And then we do have the city employee that is actually paid by the city's budget, that is the head of it. But essentially, all of these personnel bring innovative ideas to the table and then try to figure out the best way that we can lasso in these businesses and help appeal as a liaison between the city and the businesses that we're trying to bring in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Okay. We'll go on to our next question, and we'll start with Ms. Segrist. Based on the information that you have, do you think the sale of airport land to Walmart was properly handled? What would you do to settle this transaction?
Well, it's very obvious it was not properly handled. It was done under the table, and secretly this arbitration goes through, we could be facing some kind of huge fine from the FAA, and I don't want that to happen. That could end up costing us even more money. So I think we need to get this settled immediately.
Thank you, Mrs. Seegers. Mr. Harden.
To be completely honest, I don't have any direct evidence. I haven't gotten to see any of the official documentation about how this thing went down, so all I'm going off of is everything we've read in the newspaper and most of the same information that has been provided to the rest of the community. Based on that, we just have to get easier to work with, people. We do. We have to get in this position to where when the new commissioners get on there, we immediately go to the FAA and say, hey, we understand the situation, fill us in on all the actual facts, and let's do our best on both sides of this to go ahead and put this to rest. I know the couple officials that I've talked to at the FAA from me being a drone pilot, it doesn't seem to be as big of a deal up there as we're making it out down here, and maybe that's because they're a federal agency that's having to deal with a multitude of problems across the country, but I definitely don't think that any of the damage that's been done can't be undone if we just get to where we're easier to work with and talk to the right people and try to find an applicable solution to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
Was it handled improperly? I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't have the conversations with the officials, like what other comments have been made. All I'm reading are opinion articles in the newspaper. And I have not sat down with Mark Hall. I have not sat down with city officials. I've not sat down with the city commissioners at the time to say, hey, what exactly happened? And I do know there's two sides to every story. I'm not picking a side by any means. I'm just saying that I feel like more research into the other side needs to be done as well. But how would I solve it going forward? It's real simple. You just got to get everybody together and let's figure out what we need to do. Getting with the FAA, figuring out where we stand with them, and what can we do as a city to put the issue to bed, because I know I personally, and I'm sure everybody else is ready for this to be put to bed.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Mrs. Carlisle.
I agree. I think the new city commission should check into this more properly, but I do agree that I think that it was handled wrong from what I've heard and read. So, and I agree with Connie. I think we need to, if we've got something to pay with a fine, well, I don't want to pay more fines than we have to, but pay what we need to do, move on, and hopefully get some more grants for the airport, because that's been holding us back. So hopefully that we can get it taken care of on the new commission.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
Well, I'll try to talk as quick as I can because I need more than a minute, but I will definitely say 100% that it was handled wrong, and a lot of people said, well, don't tell them that you were there when it started. I was on the commission when it started, and we were talking about mending relationships between the commission and the public. We also, relationships between staff and commission, we were misled as to all the T's being crossed and all the I's being dotted. It's evident that we didn't communicate with the FAA before we made decisions that were made, and we were told that everybody had been talked to, everything had been taken care of. And that was not the only problem with that transaction, and the ball fields were involved in that. We were told that the ball fields would cost X amount of dollars and that they'd had all those figures. We were also misled on that. So there's some issues between government and commission too, but there were definite mistakes made.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. Seegers, 30 seconds. We're doing the rebuttal. No? Taylor? No?
Today, I think Justin and Taylor and Travis were there at the NAIL meeting. We had a commissioner that was at that meeting that said that we will be hearing something soon that from City Council that has been taken care of, I believe is their wording. So it'll be interesting to see if, I would think it more interesting if I hear FAA tell me that it's been taken care of, but it'll be interesting to see what the city says.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Okay, we've got a question that was submitted from the audience. We're going to start with Mr. Harden. In light of the flooding in August, what do you think of building a Western Avenue Canal and retention pond?
I've done a lot of thinking about that. the flooding that we had, that was a really heartbreaking deal, because those were middle classers like ourselves that'll probably never financially recover, some of them, from the destruction that happened to their house and the fact that they didn't have insurance. When I think about the city and the flooding issues we have, I tend to think that putting in another retention or detention pond is probably not the most applicable solution. Keep in mind, I'm not an engineer, not talking from personal know-how on this, but to me, the best thing that we could possibly do is hire a team of independent contracted engineers to come in and evaluate our entire city, because I would imagine the frequency of storms like this is going to rise, not drop, moving forward in the future. If anything, we can see that our weather patterns are becoming more sporadic and crazy, and that we should be preparing for these things ahead of time. So I think if we're able to get several independent analyses done by independent engineers that can give us a complete game plan for the city, it would prove to be more beneficial in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
Yeah, I support, I'm not sure if it, and again, I'm not an engineer, but I support studies, I support trying to figure out where our problem areas are, and if there's areas that we can go into, whether it's Western Avenue or 2nd Street or places around town that we can make our retention ponds bigger or that we can add one, by all means. I think that we need to do that in order to protect the property of the city and of the citizens that live here. So whether it's like that exact pond at that location that is brought up, I don't know. I would have to see the studies and the feasibility behind it. But I'm all for helping the flooding issues in Liberal.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
Well, I'm not an engineer also, but I know that on Clay Street that has been a drainage street for as long as I can remember, because I lived on Clay Street, and I remember playing in the water also on Webster. So it's been a problem for some time. So I do feel bad for those people that live over in that area. I do know that Earl's engineer has been studying the flood control of Liberal. 20 years ago, they had 3 engineer studies. In the past city commissioner, they spent over $1 million, but did not complete the work. So I'm hoping that we, as new city commissioners, can fix the problem, make deeper retention ponds, especially the one on Clay Street, and add more if they need to be.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
Well, I'm also not an expert on this situation, but I do understand that we need to involve as many people as we can to figure out how to solve the problem, because it is a problem. We can't just forget about it while it's drier until we have the next big rain, and it be 10 years down the road and just kind of forget about it. Something has to be done. As far as it being the retention pond on that side, that's why there has to be conversations about it. I did hear this, and that was at the last city commission meeting, I believe, that it was suggested that if we had a large body of water over there, it might attract fowl, and we might get next to the airport, might get geese, and I don't think they like birds flying around next to the airport. I don't know if that's a problem or not, but it made some sense to me. So I think it's, like I say, a problem that needs to be solved and involve as many people in the decision as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. Segrist?
Well, I took a little tour of the city the day after we had the flood, and I followed the water. And we need to do something about our flooding conditions. And perhaps we should look at, I think it was your suggestion, wasn't it? Yes, at the meeting, about the retention pond to catch the water that comes off the airport. Is that correct? I'm talking to Mr. Whisenant, I'm sorry. But it's my understanding several past commissioners have told me there have been studies, many studies, lots of money spent on studies, more to placate the public so they get off their back about doing anything about flood control. Perhaps we need to find those studies and put them to good use, and maybe there is something about a retention pond near the airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Segrist. 30 seconds, Taylor.
In light of the fact that we seem to have done so many studies in the past, I agree with Connie. Maybe we should dig those bad boys out, see if they're still viable for the way that the city's developed from this point, and definitely make sure that throughout the entire process we're presenting the plans to the community, because no matter what plan we choose, if we do anything that's going to majorly reconstruct the drainage in Liberal, I highly doubt it's going to be a project that we can afford right out of our pockets, so we're definitely going to want to make sure that the public has a major say in what plan we choose to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Ms. Barnes, Ms. Carlisle.
I just want to make it clear that I'm not opposed to the drainage pond on the west side. If the people decide that the birds aren't a problem, I'm for whatever solves the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Okay, on to the next question. We're going to start this one with Mr. Barnes. Do you support two separate wastewater treatment plants, one for the city and one for National Beef, or one combined plant, and why?
I support the best solution for the local taxpayers. Whatever that may be. Again, this is an area I'm not versed on, but I need to see both plans. I need to figure out the sustainability and the feasibility of those plans. But I do feel that anytime that you can work with your largest employer to benefit them and to benefit you as a city, I think we need to jump on that. There's been questions, well, what if National Beef leaves? Well, I mean, we need to have safeguards in place behind that, but National Beef is our largest employer, and if we can work with them, if we can collaborate with them, we've all been talking about transparency and collaboration, and it just doesn't stop at taxing entities. It's with our local employers as well, and so I'm in support of whatever is going to be the best solution for the city and the local taxpayers, and not to put us in a major bind.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
I think it should just be, well, the best thing for Liberal is, I think, just the one plant. I don't think we need to go in with National Beef at all. They want to own 70% of it and Liberal 30. So if we decide to bring in that chicken plant, I don't think they're going to want them to tie into their bathrooms, shitters, or whatever you want to call them. So I think it just should be the city and not with National Beef.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
Well, currently I haven't seen any information on either plant, and I'm not opposed to doing something with National if it's best for our community, but I do, as going to be a city commissioner, possibly my main concern is going to be the taxpayers and what's best for the community. And if it is a combined plant, then so be it. If it's not, but none of us have any information right now on the standalone plant or a combined plant. So,
thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. Segrist?
Well, I agree with you, Ronnie. I don't have enough information to make an intelligent decision on this. We did add extra tax onto people's water bills with the idea that that money would go towards a water treatment plant for the city of Liberal. I don't think National Beef was mentioned in that at all. So we need to have a public forum where both sides are explained in detail so everybody can make an intelligent decision as to what's best for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. Mr. Harton?
To reiterate what all the other candidates said, I don't think anybody really outside of 4 people that I can think of that are directly involved with that have all of the information at this point. And with it being in such early preliminary stages, I think we'll learn a lot more in the years to come about exactly what all it entails. I'm all for saving money. If there is a definitive clause in the contract with National that basically safeguards our community from ever being negatively impacted by it, then I'm all for it. If we can save the money, terrific. If we can develop a better relationship with National, great. But if there is even the smallest possibility that any kind of interruption of service at National or any kind of change in ownership at that plant would negatively affect our ability to use that facility to its fullest capabilities, then I don't understand how any of us could support it. So I'm very interested to see what kind of information comes out regarding the plant and how the future evaluations go. But until we get more information, there's just no way to make an intelligent decision.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. 30 seconds. Ms. Carlisle?
Yeah, I think the citizens should be able to vote on what needs to be done and what's the best interest of Liberal.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren? Ms. Segrist? Okay. We'll go on to the next question. I got one from the audience, and we're starting with Ms. Carlisle this time. How would you address the portable food stands / trailers?
Well, I have 2 restaurants, and I think that they need to hold the same values that we do as far as having been inspected paying their taxes. I don't have anything against them as long as they're having to do what I'm having to do. And I don't think that's happening. And I think that the money for the taxes is not, that they're not paying is not helping the city at all.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warden?
Well, I think this came to the commission a few years ago, and I think there might have been, I think it was after I was gone. I think I just remember hearing it, but then they were talking about raising the fees for what it costs to have a trailer in town, and I think that, could be part of the discussion that needs to take place. I see the disadvantage for some of the restaurants in town having to compete if the trailers aren't having to pay as much taxes, but that's, part of the, I think, the free enterprise, I guess, the competition or whatever is whether you want to sit in your car and somebody come take your order, or whether you want to go in a restaurant and sit down. I think it's some of the choices, but I'm not opposed to looking to see if the fees are high enough to warrant allowing those trailers, but I don't have a problem with the trailers.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. Segrist?
I think the food trucks should pay their fair share of a permit to operate within the city. Now, this is where we can compare with Dodge and Garden City, because it is my understanding that their fee for operating a business in their community is a lot larger than what we charge. I think we need to check the regulations and what the requirements are for having a food truck in Liberal, and bring those things up to standard so we know we are getting safe food.
Thank you, Mrs. Segrist. Mr. Harden?
100% agree with Connie on this, as far as we need to reevaluate the guidelines, the regulations, and the costs that these businesses are facing, because we never want to turn away any part of private sector free market. All right, I don't care if it's in a food truck or a brick and mortar store. It'd be the same thing, because I can understand why Chris is upset. If somebody came into town and started selling laptops out of their trunk and started undercutting me and all the other computer stores, we'd be irritated too. One thing that I've thought a lot about with the food trucks is we have so many small dilapidated parts of town. In my mind, it would be a pretty neat and innovative strategy to consolidate all of the food trucks to be designated that they can only operate within that one area, so that we can advertise that area as the food truck district or whatever, and through that make them pay the same kind of property tax and have the same kind of costs as a full-blown brick and mortar, so we're not shoving out free private sector industry and making it impossible for them to operate, but we're also leveling the playing field for the brick and mortar restaurants that currently exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
If I had a little bit more time on my hands, you'd see me out there with my own food truck. The reason why I haven't yet is they do have to follow the same licensing guidelines. The state has to come in, they have to inspect. You have to have, your water containers and all that good stuff. But I do agree that we need a little bit more structure as far as where they can go. I personally don't want a food truck parked and doing business in front of my house. And if I remember, I was at that commission meeting a couple years ago where there are no regulations as far as where they can park and how they can operate their business. So I love food truck parks. I think they're amazing, a great wave of the future, a great way to get people into one area. I think Liberal would really benefit from that, and it could be a really up-and-coming area, put it close to downtown, but I love the food trucks.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
I'm not trying to keep somebody from making a living. That's not my intention at all. I just think that they need to follow the guidelines that everybody else does that owns a business. At one time at that meeting you were talking about, they wanted to make this the food truck capital of the world, is what they had said there. So, designate a place, put them there, and, pay your taxes like everybody else does.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren? Segrist? Mr. Hart? Okay. Onward and upward. We started with you first, Ms. Carlisle, is that correct? Okay. All right, so we'll start with Mr. Warren on this one. Are you willing to listen and give serious consideration to the public input given through the Focus on the Future Committee?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the first thing I have to say. I actually think it's important, I think we've talked about it earlier, it's going to be essential in getting the 1 cent sales tax passed in the future. And I actually believe that once this commission is put in place, that we actually need to look quickly at where the 1 cent sales tax is being spent now. But if elected and can convince a majority of the commission, I intend to try to have a joint meeting with Focus on the Future and the commission when we talk about the 1 cent sales tax in the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. Segrist?
Well, as a member of the 1 cent sales tax advisory committee, yes, I want to have a meeting with the other commissioners and go over the percentages. And keep in mind, these percentages are voted on the ballot by the people. So once those percentages are set by ballot, they cannot be changed again until the next vote. So we need to have careful consideration of that. But yes, I think we should work with the Focus on the Future.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. Mr. Harden?
Absolutely, and I really think you're going to hear that from pretty much all of the candidates. You know, the whole reason that we decided to run in the first place was to be a liaison between the people in the community and the government. And whether that's the Focus on the Future Board or concerned citizens about any specific topic here in town, I'm more than interested to hear, you know, what everybody's opinion is, and especially with 1 cent sales tax, with that being such a huge beneficial thing for our community. I definitely think that the more that we include people in the committee that comes up with the percentages in the overall decision making about what we even put on the ballot for people to vote on, the better. So absolutely, anytime that you know, any committee or any group wants to get a hold of us, that's what we're here for. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
Yes, of course. I'd love to meet with the committee. I'd love to meet with them now and figure out what exactly is your vision for economic development, for housing, for beautification. I've got my own ideas I'd like to throw in the hat as far as things that we can do with the 1 cent sales tax funds. But anytime that you can have collaboration with any of those groups and those entities, I'm all for it. I want to be a part of it. I want to learn what they're doing and how I can help.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
Yeah, I agree also. The Focus on the Future, I would be more than happy to meet with them now. I did think that the commission now and the current commission and the commission to be elected should be more involved in these other groups that need help on listening and making liberal great. Like I said, I went to the truancy court, and there's a county commissioner there. There's a couple of community members that stand in, a school board member, and I see no city commissioners there involved.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren? Nothing? Ms. Segrist? Mr. Harden? Okay. Go on to our next question. We'll start with Ms. Segrist. If elected, what are your plans for the city manager and staff?
I believe that the structure of the city manager's relationship with the commissioners needs to be somewhat reversed. I believe the city manager needs to report to the commissioners, and right now it seems to be that the city manager is the boss of the commissioners. So I think that needs to be changed. I think we would need to review the job descriptions of all departments and see if there are some changes that the commissioners want to make.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. Mr. Harden?
It's an excellent question. I don't know Mark Hall. I've only gotten to meet him once or twice. And I know that his position with this city is a very, very important one. As I understand it, the city commission only has one employee, and that is the city manager, and then all of the other directors for the city fall under his jurisdiction. So you definitely want to make sure that you have an individual in that position who is making very fair, unbiased decisions that are always looking to positively affect the community. I remember when basically the same question was asked during the first candidate forum. You know, I need to work with the individual. I need to work with the directors and see how this functions in the first place, and see if there's anything that's completely defunct to where there's an immediate problem, or perhaps the problem becomes more and more apparent the longer that we serve with the individual. But I definitely think it's a situation where, to give an applicable answer, I have to be able to work with the individual for at least a short period of time to be able to experience firsthand, you know, what his required position is for the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
Yeah, my plans with the city manager and city staff would be to spend time with them, figure out, you know, do your goals align with my goals, and the current commission's goals and the community's goals. You know, what are your pain points? What can I do to help you out? What can I do to help you succeed the best at your job? To sit here tonight, though, and say, yep, this is my plan, and this is exactly what I'm going to do on night one. Like I said in the first night, I'm just not going to do it, because I don't know. I need to spend more time with them. I need to spend more time with the staff, and I look forward to doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
I agree, we need to change the structure on who tells who what. The commissioners only control the city manager. I think they should control, have a board and have to be able to hire and be involved in the department heads, not just the city manager. So there needs to be, as far as also the police department, I think they need to be in control of more than just Mark Hall. So, and it's sad to say that a lot of employees are scared to talk to anybody outside City Hall. They're afraid they're going to talk to the wrong people and get fired. I've heard that from several citizens that work for the city. So hopefully we can get that changed with the better communication and service that people need. And when they go into the City Hall, they don't feel like it's a funeral home, because that's exactly how you feel when you go in there, because nobody wants to talk to you and they don't even smile. So hopefully we can change that.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
Can I have you repeat the question so I know
Sure.
exactly how it was stated?
If elected, what are your plans for the city manager and staff?
The city has a lot of good staff. There's a lot of good department heads, and I believe that, you know, of course, the city manager is supposed to direct the staff in the direction that the commission chooses. And I don't believe that that's necessarily been the process recently. I think with the new commission, we may have a chance to do that. As far as myself and what my, it's like I say with the community, we've got to rebuild trust with the community. I have to have trust in a city manager. I'm not good with people not telling me the truth. So I'm not going to have I'm not going to be able to work with somebody that can't tell me the truth. I'll just be honest. There has to be a trust issue with the public. There has to be a trust issue between the commission and the manager.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. Seegers, 30 seconds. Taylor? Mr. Barnes? Ms. Carlisle? Nope. Okay. We're going to do one more question, and then we'll do our 3-minute closing segment. Okay. Well, why not? We'll go with this one. Do you believe liberals should expand retail, industrial, or both, and why? I don't remember who I started with last time. Is it Taylor? Taylor? Go ahead.
Man, it's tough. The hard thing about focusing on certain specific industries like that, like with retail, I highly doubt you're ever going to find a retail environment that is going to work in an area like this where the people that work inside of it are going to be making enough ends meet to be able to help our community prosper. that's the hard thing about these certain facets of industry is you're never going to make $100,000 a year working at a restaurant, for the most part, unless you own the restaurant or you're high-level administration. You're never going to make that much working in a retail store. And the biggest thing that I see as a local retail owner is not that people don't want to support our community, it's that everybody's struggling across the boards right now because of how much higher our cost of living in our entire country has become with healthcare and all of the other different facets that feed into that. So there's never going to be a specific part of any sector that I don't push for, and I want to see growth overall, but really we need high-paying jobs to where you can have a single-income household who's not living paycheck to paycheck, that's able to raise their own kids and not have to rely on both parents having full-time jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harden. Mr. Barnes?
I support both of them. I would say that I would like to see a big emphasis on industrial right now. Kind of like what Taylor says, we need more high-paying executive, higher manager level jobs in the area to help boost the economy even more. But there isn't a part of growth that I'm going to turn down. There's not a part of growth that I'm going to say that I don't want. So bring on the retail, bring on the restaurants, while we're targeting really aggressively towards industry as well.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
Yeah, I'm not going to keep anything from coming in. I think that we need the retail. I'd like Walmart to have some kind of competition, just like the restaurants have to have competition. So I believe anything that we can get to make liberal better, bring them on. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren?
I would definitely support both, but my emphasis would definitely be on industrial. I think we've got a lot of retail coming in now, and I think the retail will come. I don't think, I'm not saying you don't have to work to get it, but you definitely have to work to get the industrial, and we need to emphasize that, but we're welcome to both.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Ms. Segrist?
That answer is simple. It's industry, industry, and more industry. You get your industry, and like Ronnie said, the others will come. Build it, and the others will come.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. 30 seconds. Nope. Mr. Barnes? Ms. Carlisle? Nope. Okay. Well, then we're going to start our 3-minute closing, and we're going to start with Mr. Justin Barnes. Go ahead.
All right. In closing, I'd like to thank all the other candidates on a great campaign so far. It's been an enjoyable ride, and I've loved every minute of it. But Liberal is a great place to live, full of loving, caring, and amazing individuals that deserve the greatest leadership that the city has to offer. I know as a young, unexperienced candidate, I have a lot to learn, but I think that's what makes me unique. I do not have a lot of history with any particular organization or individual, so by hitting the ground running, doing my research, and asking the tough questions, I know that I have what it takes to shape and lead this city into what we want it to be. I will listen to your concerns and your questions. I know I will not always have all the answers, but I will do my absolute best to try to find them out and to get them back to you. I want to bring solutions to the table. I want to work with all taxing entities to make sure that there are open lines of communication, a clear vision for what Liberal looks like, efficiency in decision-making, and beneficial collaboration. I honestly just want to do my part to make this city even greater and to see it succeed to the highest degree and to give back to a community that has given so much to me and my family. I'd like to thank you all for your time and listening to my ideas and my hopes. You can follow me on Facebook at Justin Barnes for City of Liberal Commission. I welcome any questions that you have. You can email me directly on there, or I'll get you my contact information somehow. But please get out and vote. Grab your friends, grab your neighbors, grab your family, grab everybody, and get out and vote on November 7th and make your voices and your opinions heard. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Ms. Carlisle?
I want to thank all the candidates for running for city commissioner. I know firsthand experience that campaigning is not easy. However, I can say this has been a great experience for me to learn about the community and to learn more about leadership. I will also be honest and admit I would love to put everything I've learned to work for you as a city commissioner. You've heard of all the candidates talk about their plans. Just to remind you, the 3 key areas I'd like to work on as a city commissioner: better communication, better service, and better approach to economic development. I'm very excited about all the new developments I see in the community, the hotels and the restaurants and the conference centers. And all those new places will draw new people to our community. But I also like more industries and small business development that help provide a strong economic base that will help keeping our existing businesses flourishing. Also want to see the economic also on the south end of town. I frequently get asked the question, what to do about the administration staff if I'm elected commission. I would admit I'm very troubled about all the information that's going on with the softball fields, FFA, and the water waste treatment. These are complex issues that would actually take a great deal of time to explain, but the more I read and research, it certainly appears that, to me, that we have not conducted city business in a way that has been open and transparent. All public businesses need to be conducted in public. When we have the issues that are going on, we have a huge impact on our citizens. Then they need to be included in the process. The public needs to keep informed and the issues and concerns to be heard and part of the decision making. One of the key reasons I decided to run is look at the city commission. There's no women represented. As half of the community, I think women need to have a voice in our city government, and I think we provide a different view and community issues. Our city commission needs to reflect our community, and I think it's time to have a strong, independent Hispanic woman at the table when decisions are made. I know that as a city commissioner, one of the most important jobs will be to make sure everybody's treated fairly and respectfully. I hope that you will vote for me November 7th, as I will be your voice on the city commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Mr. Warren.
I just want to thank everybody again for the opportunity to come here and speak. Everyone that showed up and everyone that's listening, and I know some will probably even listen later because of the technology we have available, and I want to thank them for wanting to be involved in the future of their community. We have some wonderful candidates up here, and they all have different things to offer. They have a lot to offer. I think we've got a good chance of accomplishing things in the next few years. So I guess you say, why Ron Warren then? Well, I'd say because I know where the skeleton's at, but I know where the skeletons are at. But I think my strong suit is getting things done, and I think that's what we need to know is that I'll push to make what happens needs to happen to make our community move forward, and my ears will be are open and will be listening to what the community wants, and that'll be my main goal is let's involve the community, the intelligent people that we have in our community. Let's listen to them. We've got hundreds of people and thousands of people that can make decisions for our community. All we have to do is listen, and we can move our city in the right direction through the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mrs. Segrist.
I care about Liberal, and I care about all of you also. Tell me your thoughts and ideas about different issues, and I promise I will listen. I think we've had great questions from the public, and I hope everyone has learned something from all of the answers. I have a few public service announcements I would like to make. I want to remind you that National Voter Registration Day will be held tomorrow, Tuesday, at Liberal Memorial Library, located at 519 North Kansas Avenue. The event takes place from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Register to vote so you can make your voice heard at the ballot box. Now, advance voting begins at the election office October 23rd, located in the Seward County Administration Building at 6th and Washington. November 7th is the general election with polls opening from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Activity Center. Remember, Connie cares. Look for my name, Connie Segrist, on the ballot, and please vote for me.
Thank you, Ms. Segrist. Mr. Harden.
Like the other candidates said, thank you all so much for the people that have followed this throughout from the very beginning and cared enough to make their voices heard, and to write opinion articles to the newspaper and to make posts on Facebook. Like I said, even if there was a negative connotation to a lot of the things that took place during this election, the positive thing that we can take away from it is that we all cared enough to get involved. I know that I am very confident that whatever 3 of us 6 get elected, great things are coming for this city. One thing I've been reiterating throughout this entire campaign is that we are on the precipice of something big. I don't know what that is. I don't know if any of us do, but I do think that we've laid the financial and the structural groundwork to be able to grow this city exponentially if that's what the direction that we choose to go. Thank you guys so much for everybody that put me through to the primary to where I'm at now. I definitely never had a goal of getting involved with politics as a kid, and I've always said that regardless of the fact that I'm involved now, whether I get elected or not, I'll never become a politician. I truly care about this community, and whether I make it on this commission or not, I'll continue to work with the community and stay on the boards and aid in any way that I can. I would like to do that for you guys on the commission. However, like I said, I feel like we're sitting in a win-win with the candidates that we have here. So the one thing that I would like to close with is, remember when you guys go to vote, that is a privilege and is one that should not be taken lightly. We live in one of the very few functioning democracies left on this earth, and local government matters far more than state or federal level government. Get out there, make your voices heard. If you need help registering to vote, show up to the event that Connie just mentioned, or reach out to any of us, and we'd be more than happy to help you get registered to vote or to direct you in the direction where somebody can. But definitely just get out there and make the impact. That way, throughout this election, our entire community can feel after the primary day. Wait a minute, it's not called the primary, what's it called? The general election day, that we made this decision as a community and that we're moving forward as a community together. Thank you guys very much.
Let's give these folks a good round of applause. They did good tonight. We want to thank you all for coming out. You did fantastic in your questions. I know there were some exciting ones and some that we've gone over before.